Hello, welcome to Feedback for the week of June 26, 2012. Today we're going to talk about the Lara Croft controversy. Welcome, everyone, to the show where we give you feedback on things that we care about, more importantly, things that you guys care about. Big show today. A lot of controversy over the newest Tomb Raider game. Less about the gameplay or the setting, and more about the character and the tremendous amount of stuff she has to go through to learn adult lessons, most of which we didn't have to go through to learn our adult lessons. So I've got a very special panel joining me today. Nicole, as always, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Madam. Morgan Webb, we gave her the opportunity to wear her skeleton shirt, and she said, okay, I'll be there.
It's
and
really cute.
It is very nice. And very sparkly, too.
I'm pretty sparkly.
It's a lie. It's all a lie. And then a very, very special guest, Kelly Santiago, from, or I guess formerly of That Game Company, creator of some of my favorite PS3 experiences. So thank you so much for Journey and the journey that it gave us in Journey. It's a lot of Journey. Kelly, before we get started on Lara Croft, I have to ask you, you recently left That Game Company to pursue other things. What are those other things? And tell us all exclusively right now.
You can say naps. You can say you just want to take some naps.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, certainly after, Journey took us 3 years, so I've been enjoying a little downtime and catching up on my own video games. I'm still working with the Indie Fund, the angel investment fund that I co-founded with a number of other independent developers to fund new upcoming independent studios and getting ready for the Indiecade Festival this fall, basically.
All right. Have you seen Indie Game the movie?
I have not seen Indie Game the movie.
Okay. I'm just wondering how accurate of a portrayal it is of that particular world, because it's something that you guys were so entrenched in for a number of years. Did you stay on your couch for 19 hours a day coding for 2.5 years? Is that what it's like?
No.
Okay, it's not like that at all.
It does not have to be like that.
And have you found that the world outside of That Game Company is the idea to, outside of obviously generating funds for the stuff that you guys used to do, are you interested at all in working on one of these larger games like a Tomb Raider type game or anything like that? Or are you going to try to, whenever you do move into creating again, stay on these much smaller titles?
I mean, I really like the digital distribution space because I'm still, I still believe in making games that are provide unique and different experiences, and I think there's so much uncovered territory in games as a medium, and digital distribution sort of allows a lot of flexibility in playing around with that because you can make games of different sizes and different price points, and so, I think that's still where I'm interested.
Okay. And, one of the biggest questions we had for everybody, I think, at E3, especially with the demos we did, with people that were making games for the current generation of consoles, but obviously with an eye towards the next generation, we always ask the AAA developers, hey, guys, what do you hope the next console has to offer? And they always spoke with the idea that, how can I best service, I think, these larger products that we're delivering. But I imagine you probably have somewhat of a different perspective on that. So as far as the next generation of consoles are concerned, how do they make digital distribution better and more accessible in the next generation of consoles? How do you think that's going to happen?
Well, I mean, I think just making it easier to find games that you like to play would be a great step forward. Using more of sort of recommendation and voting systems that I think are already in place in some of the PC channels. And making it easier to find games and get into games and play with friends. All of these things. We could see some movement towards it in this last generation of consoles, but there's still a lot of room, I think, to catch up with the sort of App Store and Steam and other digital distribution spaces. So I expect to see a lot of that and a lot of progress there.
So in short, no friend code. Remove friend codes completely from the next generation of consoles.
They can't possibly keep that.
Nobody thinks that's a good idea, right?
They said they're going to keep it.
They did not.
Yeah, they did.
And what's the thinking behind that? I mean, if we could speculate just a little bit.
I think what they're saying is they're trying to say that they're protecting kids.
Exactly.
By making it so hard to use their service that the kids won't use it, therefore they are protected.
Right.
It's foolproof.
Yeah. I mean, we just recently migrated over to an internal system here where we removed all our usernames from our computers and they gave us a set of random numbers. I'm 32 years old and I can't remember my 6 digits. How's an 8-year-old going to remember their 32 digits with all their
signing in this morning?
It's ridiculous.
I really did.
I have it in my number in my other email so that I can reference it on my phone.
It's posted on my desk if any of you here want to go hack into my style. It's just
It's a post-it note right there on your...
It really is.
Awesome. We're so secure here at the Comcast building. Come on by. I'll give you the address later. Okay, let's get into to the Lara Croft stuff. I know people have been following this, and I think we've actually touched on it over the past maybe 6 or 8 months on feedback a little bit. But specifically, I want to talk about the Crossroads demo they did at E3 2012 this year. Nicole, why don't you bring people up to speed on what that demo was, and then we'll kind of start picking apart what people have to say about it.
Yeah, so at E3, Crystal Dynamics showed off the demo, like you said, Crossroads. It was all gameplay, and in the gameplay demo takes place at the beginning of the game. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing basically Laura from the very beginning, and so she hasn't really discovered who she is yet, I guess is what they're trying to sell it as. So she basically gets kidnapped and stabbed, and she falls, and she's just, all this horrible violent things are happening to her, and it's not even really gameplay. I mean, really, you're just kind of moving from next violent interaction to the next. That's kind of one of the major issues.
Yeah, they didn't really, I mean, especially in the previous demo, they didn't really show any gameplay. It was just...
Look how much we can abuse this tiny little girl.
It's a lot of moaning.
Yeah, and there's the other issue. A lot of moaning from her getting hurt a lot. And then finally, at the end of the demo, she is assaulted, I guess, by a man, one of the would-be kidnappers, who's apparently, according to the exec producer, Ron Rosenberg, also a would-be rapist. So that's kind of where the controversy stems.
Right. Now, I want to take this demo apart and get all of your opinions on this, but I think the first thing to do would be to address the last thing that you said. Crystal Dynamics studio head Darrell Gallagher made a statement clarifying kind of a little bit of that particular thing, saying one of the character-defining moments for Lara in the game, which has incorrectly been referred to as an attempted rape scene, is the content we showed at this year's E3, and which over 1 million people have now seen in our recent blah, 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 blah. In this particular section, while there is a threatening undertone in the sequence and surrounding drama, it never goes any further than the scenes that we've already shown publicly. Sexual assault of any kind is categorically not a theme that we cover in this game.
So they're saying that they don't show the sexual assault, they just talk about it and threaten it.
Right. I'm assuming, too, that what he's saying here is that they're not even trying to imply sexual assault. I don't know. This is not the type of, when I meet a lady for the first time and I try to convince her that I'm probably the best thing for her in her life, this is not how I approach a relationship. I don't know if Crystal Dynamics, their relationships are different, but I think that it's certainly implied, even if it's not actually shown. So I think the implication is just as bad as actually showing that sort of thing.
Certainly in the context of all the other shots that were around that moment or leading up to that moment as well, right? You have a lot of images of Lara Croft in physically compromising positions, like thrown back, opening herself up, and moaning. So in that context, I think it's easy to see how people could perceive it as a sexual assault. And what is sort of bothersome about the response is that it takes this tone of, well, it's not because I say it's not. And
it's like, but why do we all think it is, though? Because we all do. Because everybody who watches that has the same reaction.
Right.
And them saying, like, oh, you and your dirty little minds. You're like, no. We all got that.
And you don't even need to get to that end part to feel uncomfortable. Like, within the first 20 seconds, it's very obvious where this is going. And the moaning starts, like, immediately. As soon as she falls, it just sounds. And that's kind of what people's issue was last E3 when that's what we saw.
Mm-hmm. Now, and I guess let's just address all of the things that people had a problem with. Starting with what Nicole said, the moaning, specifically her voice. Now, I know the intention was, and executive producer Ron Rosenberg said that the old Lara Croft didn't need protecting. She was so powerful, she could do everything on her own. The theme of this game is that they want people to feel like they have to protect her. Personally, I don't think this is not the type of girl I would want to, like, this is just weird for so many different reasons, but
this guy just did not have media training. Like, I think that's,
yeah, I mean, I think he's probably, I mean, it's true, and I think that maybe he was
talking
probably not what he wanted to convey properly there. But let's talk about the first thing, the voice. I don't think that it makes her seem like a badass at all. It doesn't the moaning, even her voice, it's like kind of girlish, and I don't feel like it's indicative of a woman who's on her journey to discover herself. It's like, it's just, I think, representative of what dudes that are 18 think all women are, and that's just these, like, people that need protecting because they can't survive on their own. And that's the voice, I think, is the first issue. And that's me as a guy having this opinion. What do the ladies think about her voice?
Well, I mean, just to be clear, if I were falling off of rocks and into pits and stuff, I would make far less ladylike sounds during that, right?
Right.
So I think coming from that point, you can say, okay, there is some perspective and an abstraction that's happening in the way that voice performance was directed or chosen. There is a choice there. It's not just the fact that, oh, she's making these sounds because she's getting hit, and that's the point of it, because we're putting her in these situations at the beginning that then you'll help her work through.
And they're probably uncomfortable with the silence. They probably looked at it and watched it and maybe just felt like it was too quiet and felt compelled to put something in there and didn't really know what else to put in there. Like, I don't object to the fact that you can have a game where you feel protective over a character, because there are a lot of games where you feel like Journey, for example, was a game where I was very attached to my character and I was looking out for my character. But the problem comes when you add Tomb Raider on it, because that franchise is typically seen as a salacious franchise. I mean, the box used to have boobs sticking out of it. Like, it's not ever presented as this sort of feminine power franchise. It's presented as, let's look at Lara's chest,
and then let's watch her kick ass.
Yeah, and so when you add on sort of this protection thing, it feels very patronizing. I don't mind it as a concept, and I wouldn't even necessarily mind it as protecting a female character, because that's an element of the human experience, is protecting other people and looking out for other people. So I don't mind it conceptually. When you put it in the Lara Croft franchise, that's when it becomes a little bit questionable.
Right. And do you think if they would have gone less sexual moaning and more like, violent grunting, like this is how I compare it to the only game I can compare it to in recent memory, and my memory, I'll admit, is very terrible because of the things I've done to myself over time. But I look at the Uncharted franchise and Nathan Drake. That dude grunts and moans because he throws himself in so many terrible situations all the time. But it's not like this sexual moaning. It's just like a dude who's getting battered and beat up. So do you think the moaning would be okay if it wasn't sexual in nature? Because truly, if you just turned off the TV and left on like your sound bar or your surround sound and just had that demo playing the audio, it would be a porno. Like you would think that I'm not going to say that I have, but I'm also not going to say I haven't. So there's that. But
but
it's
Nathan Drake hasn't been a historically sexualized character.
Sure.
And I think that is a big part of where the difference comes in.
Right. So they obviously wanted to try to do something different and take it in a different direction. I'm assuming by everybody's opinion that it's not effective, that they didn't go about it.
Tomb Raider, sorry, I'm very opinionated. You can go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering, have they commented at all on the reduced proportions of Lara Croft as well? Or
yeah, they have.
Because I think that's
she gets a boob job at 23.
Right, like the
once she finds her first gold doubloons and sells those on eBay.
Are we going to meet the surgeon? Like what?
Mini
They're
games.
gonna rescue him at some point. I kind of like where this is going.
Yeah, it's the hot coffee. It's actually the hot coffee mini game in 2012. But do you guys feel that it's an effective reinvention, or do they take this completely in the wrong direction?
Okay. And you've heard me make this analogy every time a new Lara Croft game comes out. Lara Croft franchise is like that girlfriend who keeps cheating on you, but you keep going back by saying, like, this time she's changed. Like, every time a Lara Croft game comes out, everyone's like, the new game's coming out. This time it's going to be great. And it never, ever, ever is. She keeps cheating on you because she's kind of a bitch, and that's who she is. And that's why when people get excited about a new Tomb Raider game, I'm like, remember last time she cheated on you? That's what's going to happen. The game's going to suck.
But she answers the phone when I call at 3 a.m. on Saturday morning, though.
Yes, she does. Yes, she does.
That's what I need right now. I'm a sophomore in college, for God's sakes. This is what I need. Although, to be fair, the downloadable game, Temple of Light, what was the...
Oh, yeah.
I like that game.
Yeah.
But it also wasn't a Tomb Raider game in my mind, so that might have something to do with it.
Yeah.
Kelly, do you think that this is... And this is... I always... want to ask game developers where their design philosophy comes from, and I know you can't speak to Crystal Dynamics, but do you think that this decision was made because there are a bunch of dudes making this game, or do you think this decision was made because they know a bunch of dudes are going to play this game?
Yeah, I mean, and that's really great question, and I'd be interested in hearing from Crystal Dynamics on that. I find what's so frustrating about this particular conversation around the Lara Croft trailer, and then sort of the conversation around just representation of gender in games in a larger context in our industry, is that it's not for some reason being approached from that authorial, creative perspective. You know, I don't have a problem with guys making games for guys. That if you know the previous history of the Lara Croft franchise, it's not a game I've ever particularly been interested in, but there are people who are into it, and that's great. Say that you're doing that. Don't pretend that you're not, and that it bothers me when there's this kind of response like Daryl made of just, oh, it's not that because we say it's not that. And there's no conversation around, well, I'm a gamer, I'm an audience member, I'm receiving in this way. Like, let's have a dialogue about how it's being represented. And there's been, you know, other incidents lately in the industry, like this Kickstarter campaign, right, around a documentary that was being made to talk about female stereotypes and archetypes in video games. Just to have a conversation around that. And on one hand, it was a successful campaign. On the other hand, the person who was raising money, Anita Sarkeesian, was harassed and bullied and threatened. And there have been a number of incidents of this in the last year, which it just hurts me so much as a gamer and a game maker, because I feel like in the conversation with Roger Ebert that we kind of engaged with him as sort of a community of gamers, all the responses I felt were so well articulated and thoughtful, and sort of came out in a way that he even responded by saying that he was kind of surprised by that, right? That we have intelligent gaming community. But when we take that conversation to the next logical level of like, okay, games are an artistic medium, they're a creative medium, we're expressing messages through them, so let's talk about those messages, then it's met with a lot of hatred and bullying, which it's just really saddens me.
Well, we saw that after this Crossroads demo appeared, there were a ton of articles on various gaming blogs, and it eventually spread to Fox News covered it, MSNBC covered it, kind of spread. And every time it was covered, the article kind of skewed it to be about, I don't know if it was skewing it, but the article was about rape in video games and how this was inappropriate and insensitive and shows sexual assault, especially for a female character, was poorly timed and insensitive. But then from there, every single comment was just so negative, and they were berating the writer, and it was very kind of sad to see how there was no support for people who felt that this was taking it too far. Well,
and then people kept watching those stations, and Special Victims, Law & Order Special Victims Unit comes on, and they in a lot of detail describe rapes, child sexual assaults.
That's like my favorite show, though. Side note, I watch so much Law & Order.
Okay? But why is that graphic?
Why is it okay in TV shows but not okay in video games?
And not okay in video games?
I think it's it's not okay in either. But I mean,
I don't think it's okay in either, and I don't think that those shows should be on. Honestly, I really don't. But our society has accepted them as entertainment, and so, and I'm sort of playing devil's advocate, but like, why should it be accepted in video games? Like, why shouldn't video games be allowed to explore that space?
Well, I think video games should be allowed to. I think a developer should be able to explore whatever space they want, right? And so that means not every game is for every person. Just what's so frustrating is then when you say, that trailer for Lara Croft really sucked and I don't really appreciate it, to be met with the answer of, well, it's because you're stupid.
Right.
It's just like, really? Why can't we talk about this at all?
We're going to win in the end.
Yeah.
Because we are, because more and more women are growing up as gamers and are gamers and are rejecting the idea that they're not accepted and games aren't made for them. And more people, women who make games and sort of set examples. I think in the end, as long as we're vocal and stand up for ourselves, in the end, we're going to win.
Well, I think that
I can tell you right now that you will, because we will eventually listen to everything that women say, because that's just what happens ultimately in the end anyway.
Well, I think short term, I think that that this argument could be won in that I think it's very possible that this scene will be taken out of the final build of the game. I think that if you have a sexual maturity or sexual violent rating from the ESRB, you're probably going to get an M, and you're going to have trouble selling your games to places like Walmart. Like, I just think that's a serious thing that because of this reaction, I think they're going to think about.
Right.
Because it's going to be really hard to sell a game that's bordering on AO.
Right. Well,
It's not sexual assault. It says so right here on
Yeah.
this paper.
The ESRB
They said.
can
they
can
said it's
disagree.
not, so it's not.
They can make up their own mind. They're the ESRB, so
and-
we'll see.
So let's assume they remove that particular scene from the game, but you still have all these other things. My question to you would be, like, we tend to pick on Nicole a little bit because she's usually the youngest person on the crew, but in this particular case, it works. You do represent, I think, a younger generation than us who have been playing games for a really long time. Are you concerned at all that this is a current game developer's idea of what an empowered female character should be in a game? Like, does that concern you at all?
Well, at first it didn't. At first, I didn't really see very many problems with this. I mean, I definitely respect everyone's opinions, and I've heard a lot about this at G4. But just listening to people who are younger than me, and then reading we posted about this on our the G4 Facebook page. Just reading the comments, and we had within an hour 500.
Yeah. Why don't you I know we have a couple
Three
here.
were negative. Everyone was overwhelmingly supportive of this game, thought the new Lara Croft looked great. They were commenting on which hot actress she looked like more. There was no concern whatsoever. And I think that's
Now, do you
a
assume?
pretty common opinion.
Can you assume though that most of those Facebook posters were probably male?
Some of them were female.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they didn't have any issue with it whatsoever.
No, well, three did.
Okay. And did you pull any of those? Do we
Yeah,
have?
yeah.
Let's read
Some of
one
them
of
are
those.
questions.
Okay.
This one's from Lauren Robbins. I'm
Okay.
assuming that's a girl. I hate everything the exec producer said in the statements he made. He's referring to Ron Rosenberg's statements. It's condescending to say, well, I want to protect the new Laura. Who plays a video game because they want to protect the main character? Are there any?
Yeah, I can assure you, when I grew up
on the
playing,
PS2.
when I was playing video games, like when I started Super Mario Brothers, I didn't care about rescuing. It wasn't about rescuing the princess, who was, by the way, the least empowered female character in the history of video games.
Repeatedly,
But it wasn't
making
about that,
mistakes.
man. It was about getting the flower that let me throw fireballs.
And
But I was
jumping on
7, so what
Koopas.
did I care? But
You're
that's
also flying around with a raccoon tail.
Yeah, I mean, it's
so-
great. They built a whole game. They built a whole movie around promoting a video game. That's what made that game awesome. But I do, man. I want to protect. If I'm not playing a game in the first person perspective, whatever it is on screen, I want to protect that person. I was protecting Nathan Drake.
Well, Nathan Drake
from-
is useless without me.
Exactly.
I mean,
he really
can't
is.
do
He can't make any
anything
good
on his own.
decisions.
God, he's
much
useless.
respect to Nathan Fillion, who will eventually play Drake in the movie, regardless of what Mark Wahlberg wants to do. Nathan Fillion should play it. But I protect Nathan Drake, man. So, and I'm cool with that. But
I'm
this is
always
a
the
different
person.
thing.
That's me. I was Nathan Drake. I know that's weird, I guess, but
No, it's just a
but
different
I
way of playing the game.
Usually don't play games thinking that I'm protecting them. That's me,
Mm-hmm.
especially in games where I can customize. That's definitely me.
Right.
I'll just name
I
them
feel
Nicole.
like games, what games are essentially is their rules and their boundaries, and that it's interesting to hear you guys' perspective, because my feeling has always been sort of hardcore active gamers, and I'm in this category, are people who we usually try to find what those limits of the boundaries are by testing them, and in third-person games, that usually involves putting your character in a lot of compromising positions to try and break it as much as possible, find out what those boundaries are, right? So, Grand Theft Auto 4, one of the best things I thought to do in that game was my husband and I would spend evenings going up to high places in New York City and then throwing Nico off the building.
And
right?
they say
seeing what
romance
happens.
is dead.
Date night, time to murder Nico. Things are good here.
So great. And a great way to relieve frustration and settle arguments. So.
Right.
I wonder if male gamers are going to want to protect her. I
Yeah,
wonder if
so-
they're going to feel, sort of, fatherly or parental towards
Right.
her.
Which is weird.
I don't.
It's a weird thing for
as a male
oversexualized
gamer, I
character.
can tell you that I don't really. It's for me personally. It's not about her journey, and it's not even about me protecting her. It's about the gameplay being engaging for me. It's like if it's just an Uncharted game with a lady skin on it, that's fine with me. I just want action adventure. That's all I really care about. So maybe I'm not part of what these guys are talking about here, because I'm not going to feel much of an emotional attachment to Laura, but I also don't feel much of an emotional attachment to any third person person
that's
that
what
I
feel
have.
Like so
Yeah.
often they're just this object you use
Sure.
to move through the experience.
Yeah. That brings up an interesting question. Did you guys, if you took any kind of, I guess, metrics of journey, when you played cooperatively with somebody else, I'd be interested to see how many people felt like they were sharing the experience with the stranger and how many people felt like they were protecting the stranger. Did you guys do any sort of research on that at all?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, we playtest regularly, and I think by the end of our playtesting, at least, we got it to a place where it felt like you were sharing the experience with one another. We had a mechanic early on in which those little strips of cloth that are floating around were currently in the game. They sort of just touch you and then power up your cape so that then you can fly later. And it used to be that you would collect them. And having that collection mechanic, most of the time when our players would encounter that other person, immediately there was hostility because the feeling was, yeah, that person's out to steal my resources.
Right.
And so we had to tune that mechanic to not make it feel that way because that was not the goal of the experience we were trying to make.
That's fascinating, though, that you guys had to alter the game because people are so competitive, but people they can't really compete with.
Well, but since you can't communicate with them, you don't know their intentions.
So you just assume the worst.
Right, because if I knew that I was playing with you, then I knew that we would share. But since I can't even communicate with the other person, then you'd feel very disempowered and you feel like the only way that you'd actually make it is that you'd have to compete with them.
Right.
Right.
I didn't compete with anybody in Journey. I just sat on my couch for days and ran around in the sand, and that's what I did. And it was awesome.
You emerge with a beer.
He's really not good at video games.
I just wanted to
It's his time.
I just wanted to slide down sand, man, and it was awesome. We're running out of time here, unfortunately. We have time, I think, for one more question. This is pretty interesting because it touches on a couple things, but it's a different perspective, I think. And it also, I'm assuming it's from a guy miles away from Duffield. I'm assuming Miles is his name. Says, the trailer scared me, and that's why people are angry, talking about the Crossroads trailer. She was as terrified as I was, and I think that's a good thing.
Really?
The problem with the depiction of women, who wants to be scared? I don't. The problem with the depiction of women in video games is actually a problem with the portrayal of men. Not every man, and in fact very few, is a walking meat sack powerhouse, stealing that phrase, Miles, a walking meat sack powerhouse who is perfectly fearless. We need more terrified male characters who go through hell because they have to. I was so unbelievably sick of the badass image, and in Uncharted, I was actually terrified for Nathan's life, to Morgan's point, because he's useless without us. He's a badass because in the end, he has to get through all of these things, and I feel like Laura did too. Am I totally off base here?
I think that's interesting. I mean, that's what Naughty Dog is trying to do with The Last of Us, is trying to create a situation where every battle could be your last and create that fear and protection in that way. So I do see, I guess I do see what he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a valid perspective. It's unfortunately something that's used a lot, I feel like, to deflect off the conversation of the representation of women in video games.
Sure.
But it's a totally valid conversation that we should be having about the representation of men in video games as well, because I think certainly there are issues there as well.
Yeah.
I just think it's great that right now we're getting to the point when people with different perspectives can make games for themselves and make experiences for themselves.
Yes.
And serve a lot of these, we can always have the AAA, just like we always have these AAA movies that have, superheroes and meatheads and sexy women in cat suits. And, you can have indie films that explore different facets of humanity. So
yeah, and I feel like in other mediums, there's not as much of a taboo around, you know that there are some male writers that write great female characters and some don't, which is understandable because they're not women. It's hard to get into the mindset of another person. I don't know necessarily that I would write great male characters, for instance. But in games, it's like this assumption that, yeah, I can totally do, I could do a male character just because it's a game. I don't know why there's that difference.
Well, there's always the assumption of the male perspective, and you see it like in billboards and movies. You assume that, women, for example, when they're watching a movie, often take on that male perspective, and you watch the movie as if you were a man, and I think that women do that in video games as well. So, if we sort of shift our perspective a little bit and are cognizant of that as women, that we're coming to these games with a male perspective, I think that sort of will help when we're trying to comment on the industry and, create our own things.
I feel like I'm going to be like way better in my marriage having sat here and had this conversation with you guys because I feel like I learned a lot. I really feel good about it. And maybe this is maybe I'm completely off base here, but I'm going to throw this out there. I'm thinking of going home and playing Dawn Guard as soon as I finish with work today. So my question to you, Nicole, would be: we played, obviously all of us played a lot of Skyrim, and it was inarguably the most successful game I think of last year, one of anyway. Do you feel that maybe part of the reason Skyrim was so successful is because it kind of it didn't really embody male and female representations games. It was all about, like, I could create a male character but play it as ladylike as I wanted and vice versa. Do you think maybe part of the reason it was so successful is because it allowed people to define their gender experience in that game?
I don't think Skyrim had so many
and
things
Skyrim was
going
awesome,
for it.
first
I
of all.
think that's happenstance.
Just
And
throwing it out
guys
there.
At Bethesda are, Todd Howard's like the nicest guy in the world, and
Because there really aren't any sexual stereotypes in that game. I mean, basically, if you marry a guy or marry a girl, they have the exact same dialogue for you.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the only difference is that the women villagers wear dresses. And that's
because
basically...
they put the whole game on one disc. They couldn't take
which I'm fine with.
Which we
but-
still haven't figured out how that's happened. We've had quite a few people in
I've
here talk
asked
about
Todd
that Black
Howard,
Knight.
and he said black magic.
Yeah, which
I
is
accept
fine.
that.
We're okay with
it's
that.
It's like a black soul gem, and inside that disc is a soul. That makes sense.
I love that you brought it back to Skyrim.
I did
Well
play Dawn
played.
Guard last night. So.
Well
It
played.
makes me think of the story around the lead character in the Alien movies, and that character was cast as Sigourney Weaver eventually because there was actually no gender mentioned in the script, and so the casting director called the writer, and when they were getting ready to cast for the film, and was like, "So is this a man or a woman?" And he was like, well, I guess it could be either.
Yeah, that's why I named her Ripley.
So it's sort of when you're actually gender blind, it seems to create maybe more interesting female characters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and those are my favorite female characters who are people in games that happen to be women.
Mm-hmm.
I play, like, when I create a character, Jess is like, this is so odd that you do, but like, maybe this says something about me, but like Saints Row is a great example. Saints Row the Third, I created a female character and then spent hours just playing dress up with her. What does that say about me?
A lot. A
Does
lot
that-
of
'cause
things
I
that
don't
we
think
don't have
that's-
time to get into today.
Yeah, all right, cool. I'm just since we were talking
yeah.
out our feelings here, I just wanted to know.
My husband was playing it while I was away on a business trip, and I came back and saw the depiction of females in that game. And I was like, "What have you been doing while I've been gone?"
no,
He goes,
it's
"Well,
terrible.
at least I put clothes on her before you got back."
But Saints Row, I have to say, like, actually, it's totally the game I would be offended by, but it was so tongue-in-cheek.
Exactly.
It really didn't offend me at all. I actually had a fantastic time. I made a character who I thought kind of looked like me, and I put a trench coat on, and I was like the badass female chief of what was probably a brothel.
Yeah.
I think
It's not
any
trying to
female
be-
stereotypes are negated by the fact that you could beat a dude up with a dildo baseball bat.
Oh, yeah, that totally makes it
If you're
better.
abusing dudes with dildo
No?
baseball bats, you can't feel that bad about the busty
I mean, that
protagonist.
game knew what it was.
Yeah.
Right? It didn't try to be anything else.
Yeah, that was sort of like Grindhouse or Pulp,
Sure.
Which is why when you see the Hitman Absolution trailer trying to be Grindhouse Pulp, but it's like a AAA title and everything's all shiny and glossy, it doesn't work.
Nuns
because
wear latex. I mean, I went to a
that
Catholic
trailer-
school. They totally do.
Totally. That
Yeah.
trailer takes itself seriously, whereas Saints Row doesn't take itself seriously.
Right.
Same with the
That's
Lollipop
difference.
Chainsaw that just came out. Like, it's over the top, boobs in your face, and like there's actually an achievement for looking up her skirt. And for some reason, it doesn't feel sexist to me because it's just so over the top. And
Morgan,
she
we don't
really
have
is-
time for your response. We don't have time for your response on
I'm
this
trying.
one.
I'm a level 3.
Yeah.
I'm mixed feelings.
All right, so final thing for you guys quickly. Will you play the new Tomb Raider game when it comes out?
I have to be educated about my complaints, don't I?
Yes, you do.
Really
Good
good
point.
answer.
Good point. Because I'm sure we'll have multiple discussions on the show on X-Play about that game. So that's a yes for you.
Unless I'm assigned it for some reason, probably not.
Not going to happen. Okay.
And I would not play it if it wasn't sort of part of my job to do so. I would
Okay.
never play it.
So neither one of you playing it, Kelly?
Yeah, no, there's just way too many other games out
Yes,
there
right?
that I don't have issues with, so why?
All right. Very, very interesting. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. We know where to find the both of you, g4tv.com, every week on X-Play with me. Kelly, where can people find out what you're doing next?
Well, I have a website, kellysantiago.com, and on my Twitter feed,
Great. We'll find, which is at Kelly Santiago?
Kelly-san.
Kelly-san.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for being here, taking the time out of your busy day of raising funds for cool indie game stuff. Morgan, I will see you tomorrow.
Yes.
Nicole, I will stalk you at the office because you always have donuts at your desk. Thank you guys so much for joining us. New episodes of Feedback go up every week at g4tv.com/feedback.